Every empire is supposed to have a heart, a capital city where power is concentrated, a throne room where rulers sit, a center that anchors authority, culture, and identity. From that center, laws spread outward. Armies march outward. Wealth flows inward. This is how empires are remembered. Rome, Babylon, Athens, Chang'an, names that became symbols of dominance long after their power faded. But one of the most successful empires of the ancient world defied this rule completely. It ruled vast territory. It commanded armies across continents. It collected tribute, enforced law, and maintained order for generations. And it did so without ever establishing a permanent capital. Power did not live in stone walls or palaces. Power moved. To foreign observers, this empire was confusing, even unsettling. Ambassadors arrived seeking the center of authority, only to discover it had shifted. Generals marched toward cities they believed were vital, only to find them irrelevant. Conquerors searched for a heart to strike and found none. This was not a weakness. It was the empire's greatest strength. In the ancient world, capitals were magnets. They attracted wealth, bureaucracy, ambition, and corruption. Over time, they became rigid, predictable, vulnerable. Once a capital fell, legitimacy collapsed. The empire often followed soon after. This empire refused that risk. Its ruler did not reign from a single city. Instead, the court traveled constantly. Administrators, judges, scribes, guards, and officials followed. Wherever the ruler was, there was the capital. Justice was dispensed on the move. Laws were proclaimed in camps, estates, provincial centers. Authority was not a place, it was a presence. This system required extraordinary organization. Roads were maintained with obsessive care. Supply networks stretched across the empire, ensuring food, horses, equipment, and lodging were always available. Way stations dotted the landscape, ready to host the moving court at a moment's notice. Messengers relayed information rapidly, ensuring orders reached distant regions, even as the ruler continued onward. To subjects, this created a powerful illusion. The ruler was everywhere. No province felt distant. No governor felt beyond scrutiny. Corruption was riskier when authority could appear without warning. Rebellion was harder to coordinate when power did not sit still. This mobility reshaped governance itself. Rather than issuing decrees from afar, rulers witnessed conditions firsthand. They heard disputes directly. They rewarded loyalty personally. Regional elites could not monopolize access to power because power refused to settle. Foreign powers struggled to understand this system. Diplomacy depended on location. Treaties were signed in palaces, rituals performed in sacred halls. But here, negotiations happened in temporary courts, military encampments, hunting lodges, border towns. Legitimacy did not depend on architecture. It depended on recognition. The empire's enemies made a critical mistake. They assumed that to defeat it, they needed to capture its capital. They wasted years targeting the wrong cities. When they seized one administrative center, the empire continued functioning. When they burned another, authority simply shifted elsewhere. There was no single symbolic blow that could cripple the system. Even succession was handled differently. Heirs were proclaimed wherever the ruler happened to be. Loyalty followed the person, not the place. Oaths were sworn to individuals, not thrones embedded in stone. This fluidity allowed the empire to expand rapidly. New territories were integrated without waiting for bureaucratic infrastructure to be built. Authority arrived with the ruler and stayed as long as necessary. Borders were not fixed lines, but zones of influence reinforced by presence. But this system came with a hidden cost. Without a permanent capital, the empire lacked a fixed symbolic center. There was no eternal city to embody its identity. No monumental core to unify memory. Power was practical, efficient, adaptable, but abstract. As long as leadership was strong, this worked. When leadership weakened, cracks began to show. Succession disputes became more dangerous. Rival claimants established rival courts. Each claimed legitimacy through movement, but without a central point to resolve disputes, authority fractured. Regional elites, once kept in check by mobility, began anchoring power locally. What had once been flexibility became fragmentation. As external pressures mounted, the empire struggled to coordinate defense without a central rallying point. Armies loyal to different claimants marched in different directions. Governors began acting independently. Temporary capitals hardened into permanent ones. Ironically, the empire began to imitate the very systems it had once avoided. Cities that had never been capitals suddenly became seats of power. Palaces were built. Courts settled. Authority crystallized, and with it, vulnerability. When the empire finally collapsed, it did not fall in a single dramatic moment. There was no sack of a great city, no burning heart torn out. Instead, it dissolved. Authority faded unevenly. Provinces drifted away. What remained was not conquest, but absence. Later, historians struggled to describe it. Where did it rule from? Where was its capital? Where did it truly end? The answers were uncomfortable. The empire had proven that centralized power was not inevitable, that permanence was not required for dominance, that authority could exist without walls, without monuments, without a fixed throne. And in doing so, it revealed something profound. Capitals are symbols, but symbols can be attacked. Presence is harder to defeat. For centuries, this empire ruled by refusing to stand still. It forced its enemies to chase shadows. It denied them the satisfaction of conquest, and it reshaped how power itself could function. In the end, what destroyed it was not the absence of a capital. It was the loss of belief in movement as authority. Once power stopped moving, it became something else, something conquerable,